Okay, I'll move on. Thank you, Cadi. I know I speak for everybody that's on this forum at the moment and for a wider network, a wider church, broad church of support when we stand in complete solidarity with you in your family, getting justice, however long that may be. We'll now hear from someone who's closely linked to the campaign for justice for Sheku and someone who has a track record of standing up to racism. Amar Anwar.
Hi, Gozi. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Amar.
Okay. Thanks very much to the STUC for organising this today and a very short notice, and also to Cadi Johnson. I know how difficult it was for Cadi, for the Sheku Bayoh family, not to attend the demonstrations today. They thought that was the right decision. Cadi, of course, works as a staff nurse, and she thought that the risk to life was too much. But I also want to say thank you to the many thousands across Scotland and across the United Kingdom who have marched, who have demonstrated today. I might not have agreed with them attending because of COVID-19, but it shows the extent of anger at racial injustice that exists within this society. Because this isn't, people ask me the question over the last 2 weeks saying, well, why George Floyd? It's an issue that struck a chord right across this planet because of racial injustice that exists, not just in the United States. And we need to remember that when we talk about George Floyd, it was Cadi that said yesterday and the day before, it says, Scotland's George Floyd is Sheku Bayoh. The Sheku Bayoh family have been fighting for 5 years for justice. You know, when we look at the TV screen pictures, when we see the riots, when we see the police rioting, the state rioting, the violence of the police in the United States against the demonstrators, we have been here before. You could replace the pictures with the 1950s and the 1960s and the civil rights movement, and it would almost seem exactly the same. But one piece of hope that I've got from the last week or so of watching the pictures is the fact of the movement is now dominated by young black and young white people who have said enough is enough. But when we talk today and when people demonstrated today, one thing that stood out for me, and I apologize for my anger, because it's also frustration. Having fought racism for 30 years in this country, and it seems to me that every so often along comes a family in the midst of their grief, having to set up a campaign. And no one can understand the pain and the absolute pain that you feel when you have lost a loved one, and in the midst of your grief, having to set up a campaign simply to ask for justice. And remember this, it's not just Sheku Bayoh. Since 1969 in this country, there have been 3,000 deaths in custody. And ask the question, how many police officers have been successfully prosecuted for homicide, for the charges of homicide in the United Kingdom, in a democracy? And the answer is zero. 1,841 since 1990, and the answer is zero. So when you want to talk about George Floyd, then you start. And if you want to fight racial injustice, and if you think Black Lives Matter, it's not just about hashtags. It's not just about the selfies. It's not just about hanging the banners outside the window. And all these things are important because it meant a great deal for Cadi, because today was the 5th anniversary of the funeral, the day that she lay her brother to rest, but he does not rest as far as the family is concerned. Today was the day that we marched with his coffin through the streets of Kirkcaldy demanding justice. And so today that is what happened. And what we said right at the start of this campaign was at the time was the dead cannot cry out for justice. It's the duty of the living to do so for them. But time and time again, what happens is that black people, once they die at the hands of the police, they are criminalized, they are stereotyped, they are stigmatized. And what happens is it's in order to negate their right to life. And now I am proud of the trade union movement, because people will ask me, why the trade union movement? Over the years, in Scotland, it's been the trade union movement that has always come to the aid of the black and Asian and minority ethnic community, as they did some 20 years ago for the Choker family after a racist murder. Now, like Surjit Singh Choker, I never knew Sheku Bayoh. Right? What I do know is that he wasn't a rich man, he wasn't a powerful man, but he had a stubborn family, 3 sisters, a mother, a brother-in-law, his partner Colette, and he also had 2 young sons. And this family has refused to be patronized, to be bullied, to be lied to or silenced. And I think it's very important to remember what actually happened to Sheku. On the 3rd of May 2015 at 7:30 a.m., What happened was that police received reports of a black man walking down the street acting erratically with a knife, and 6 police vehicles were dispatched. 6 police vehicles. The first 2 officers to arrive on the scene. Sheku walking down the street, open palms, no knife in his hand. No knife was ever found upon him. He never brandished a knife. He had never attacked a police officer knife. But what was the response of the police who greeted him? They used CS spray, they used pepper spray, they used batons, and he was brought to the ground in less than 1 minute. And he had a total of up to 9 police officers involved in the restraint and some 6 officers on him. Some 54 separate injuries, lacerations, a broken rib. And he lost, when you say the words, "I can't breathe," about George Floyd, his family, Sheku Bayoh's family, has said, he said the words, "I can't breathe. Get off me." The first 2 officers who were on top of him weighed between 40 to 50 stones. I know with young children, the amount of times I say to the older ones, get off the younger one because they cannot breathe. But when you're talking about maybe 6 officers on top of him, holding him down, ankle cuffs, leg restraints, handcuffs, and then losing consciousness rapidly within the space of a few minutes, never ever to recover. He was taken to the hospital in which Caddy was working, and he was officially pronounced dead. He had no previous history of violence. And I'll say this, because the lies and the stigmatization started straight after Sheku died. The police sources that told the press and the politicians that he brandished a knife and he attacked people with a knife, that he had taken drugs. Well, there was no knife. And even if Sheku Bayoh had taken drugs, so what? Did he not have a right to life? Did he not deserve the right to live? And if he was breaking the law, then the police had to act. They had to act, but they had to act reasonably, legitimately, and proportionately, and he had the right to life. And I will say this, that many people have said, well, what about the race? Race didn't come from us. The question of race didn't come from us. It was the family of one of the police officers who got in touch with the Sheku Bayoh family and then with the BBC to say that one of the officers was a racist and that he hated black people and he had been violent to their own family. And then that was exposed. The family trusted the PERC, the independent investigators. They trusted the Lord Advocate to investigate. And this is what I will say to you, is this. Why is it that when a black person dies in police custody, it can take up to 5 years for the Crown Office to investigate that death? Because I'll tell you what, if it had been 9 black people that had surrounded a white man and he had died in suspicious circumstances in restraint, it wouldn't take 5 years for the Crown to decide whether they were going to prosecute or not. But that's exactly what happened in the case of Sheku Bayoh. It took 5 years to make that decision. And then it goes to the police. Those police officers went straight back to the police station in Kirkcaldy. They sat in the same canteen room for some 8 hours and they were able to converse with each other. They were able to speak to each other, but they denied the independent investigators statements for some 32 days. In my 20 years as a criminal defense lawyer, I have never known the police to put 8 suspects in a room together, let alone the fact that they did this with 9 police officers. As for the policewoman who feared for her life, let me just put the fact out there. That policewoman who was injured went to the hospital and was released some 35 minutes later and went back to the police station to join her colleagues and to sit in that police station for up to 8 hours. That was the extent of the injuries at the time. Sheku Bayoh was dead. He never got up. He never got to go and see his family, and the family feel betrayed by the Scottish criminal justice system. And of course, we now have a public inquiry, and there are those who say, well, we should remain quiet. And of course, the Police Federation have been very quiet for the last 2 weeks since the death of George Floyd. But the only thing they have said was today in the Sunday Mail, with the complaints that the Police Federation made about police officers taking the knee. I, for one, am uncomfortable about certain individuals, politicians taking the knee, leaders of nations taking the knee. But I will not condemn those who do wish to take the knee. And for the Police Federation to speak out today of all days to complain about officers, one of whom is a high-profile Asian officer taking the knee, all I'll say is, why don't you concentrate on the public inquiry? Why don't you concentrate on giving the facts to the family and giving them justice? Because that is what the family want. The family said from day one, we only want to know the truth. But what we'll say is this: 5 days of protest and civil unrest in the United States has given the family of George Floyd the black community in the United States more than we will ever get. Because within 5 days, it was decided that 4 police officers will stand trial for the death of George Floyd. And in 5 years of campaigning, in 5 years of the Scottish criminal justice system, those police officers, not one of them will ever stand trial. Not for the charge of murder, not for the charge of culpable homicide, not for the charge of serious assault, not for the charge of assault, attempt to pervert the course of justice, or any breach of health and safety regulations. Why is it 3,000 deaths since 1969 and not one single successful prosecution? That is a burning injustice that exists in us. And I will say this to you. I will say this to all those people who are watching today. This is not just about one demonstration. This family has fought for 5 years, and I say this on a personal basis. You can hear the anger in my voice. I am tired of grieving at gravesides. Our community is tired of grieving at gravesides. I want a day that we can celebrate the lives of our black brothers and sisters rather than grieving their loss at the hands of racial violence. So we need you. We need the people who are listening here today. We need you to do more than just hashtags. We need you to support the campaign for justice of Sheku Bayoh. It has been relaunched today by the Scottish TUC. We need you to get the message out. We need you to support the crowdfunder, and we need you to join the line. We need you to take the knee when it comes, when we appear at the public inquiry. We need you to contact your MSPs. And I'll say this to every single politician, with a few honourable exceptions, to every public figure that went out and put up the name of George Floyd and said Black Lives Matter and their hearts were broken. Where were you in 5 years when we fought for the family of Sheku Bayoh and we heard nothing from you? Say his name, Sheku Bayoh, and do not stop. The powers that be carry a heavy responsibility. Then no officer should ever be above the law. We know, and the family know, they will never really get justice, but they want the truth. They want a legacy. They want a legacy of Sheku Bayoh. They want his 2 sons to grow up being proud of a father that they never knew. He had lots of similarities to George Floyd. He was a loving father. He was a loving partner. He was a loving son. And he was a loving brother. But as I said, the similarities end there, because in George Floyd's case, 4 officers will face trial. In Sheku Bayoh, they will never, ever face trial. We will soon hopefully begin the public inquiry. And of course, there's people who have condemned the Scottish government. That's for them to do so. But what I will say is this: the public inquiry will start. What is essential that people keep their eyes on it, that they come to the public inquiry, that they stand outside the public inquiry, they write to the politicians, and they remember this inquiry will also investigate the question of race, and it is still to be picked. The panel members and the assessors that will sit aside the senior High Court Judge Lord Brackadale. What made the difference to the Stephen Lawrence inquiry was this: that it wasn't simply a white upper middle class judge that was sitting there, but the people who had the background, their diversity in the background, to be able to guide a judge to see when they see racism. And I'll say this to the Police Federation, who spoke out today, because they have also attacked the Sheku Bayoh family repeatedly. When you have an organisation whose committee is made up of 137 white police officers, you have a problem. When you have a parliament that only has 2 black or Asian representatives, you have a problem. This society has had a problem. When I had my teeth smashed out in 1991 by Strathclyde police officers, and I took my case to court, and it took 4 years, and in the 4 years I was arrested some 20 times, and several times I appeared in court, eventually to win my case and to be told, you made legal history. You're the first black or Asian person to win a case for a racist attack by the police. Why am I, since 1991 and 95 when I won my case, still the only person? We need for that to change, and it isn't just carrying placards and banners, and we need our politicians to know that this movement is not going away. This movement is launched today. We will get justice. We will not give up until we get justice and truth for Sheku Bayoh and for all those people. For Ahmed Sheikh, murdered in the 1980s, a Somalian refugee killed by casuals and racists and individuals who walked away for that murder. Remember Surjit Singh Chokha. Remember Imran Khan, who died and murdered because of racism. And also remember the case of Chris Donald. There has been case after case in this country. And just because we don't have the mobile phone footage doesn't mean it didn't happen. We had the CCTV, we have seen the statements, we know what has gone on, and we want it to be exposed, and the family need your support. We need your support. We cannot stop fighting for this. And please, I beg you, I plead with you to say, do not walk away from this movement now, because you will never be forgiven. This is an opening of an opportunity for the people of Scotland to say, we don't just care about black lives in the United States, but we also think black lives matter in Scotland. Support the crowdfunder. The dead cannot cry out for justice, but it's the duty of the living to do so for them. Thank you so much.
Amar, I